Well, in the middle of summer when there's nothing going on, and then Stephen Curry suddenly says some very interesting comments, you better believe we're excited here at Locked On Warriors. And I got Jack Winter of Clutch Points, the Golden State Warriors beat reporter, talking about that, talking about some interesting comments from Boogie Cousins pertaining to Chris Paul and the Warriors. We're going to break it all down next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. And of course, here on YouTube, where every live show is broadcasted. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can follow Jack Winter on Twitter, Elon Musk's weird toxic platform that's called X now. Absolutely. On Twitter at Armstrong Winter. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Threads. I am now on there. At Dog Wild. Jack, it's great to see you, man. Been a couple months. Good to have you back on the program. How are you doing in beautiful Montana? And give us your initial thoughts on the Warriors offseason so far. Take it away, sir.
Yeah, great to see you, man. It's been a while.
You too.
Man, I can't believe it's been the playoffs since the last time we've talked. Even obviously a lot has happened since then. Great to be out in Montana, save the heat and the wildfire smoke that everyone in North America is dealing with right now. But let's move on to talk Warriors. I like what the Warriors did this offseason in general. I always thought that they had to move on from Jordan Poole. It was just a matter of how they were going to do it, right? And I think trading him for Chris Paul will obviously help on the floor next year, but then also keep some salary flexibility open, kind of like how the Warriors traded for D'Angelo Russell and then turned that salary slot into Andrew Wiggins.
Right.
So I have some thoughts on that, on the fit with CP, all that, but I certainly don't think that's a bad move by Mike Dunleavy. And I like what they did at the minimums with Saric and Joseph. And then the draft, I kind of have some more questions on. I understand the fit with Podziemski for sure. Love what they did with TJD at 57 and how Dunleavy kind of massaged that with his brother. Love to see that, that type of knack from a rookie GM. I do have some questions about Podziemski, especially after Summer League. I'm not sure how much he's going to play this season. But in general, I think it was definitely a successful offseason for the Warriors. I knew they needed to re-sign Draymond. You knew it, I assume. They knew it, Draymond knew it, and they came to a number that was agreeable for all parties. So I'd definitely say the Warriors had a successful offseason at this point, and I'm looking at the calendar. I'm looking at the date now, August 3rd, almost 2 months until training camp. It needs to get here, man. I've had enough of no NBA basketball.
Oh, I'm going crazy right now. I'm totally with you. Look, I feel like I've beaten every subject, like the dead horse that they all are, but you're bringing a fresh perspective. People haven't heard your insights, and they value that tremendously. Never mind the fact that you're a handsome son of a bitch who makes me look ugly every time I'm next to you. But let's go with Brandon Podziemski right off the bat. What are your thoughts, man? Because I don't have a strong opinion on him so far. I feel like Summer League is too short, too early to properly judge and analyze a player. I just don't think it would be fair to be critical on a negative basis. Although I'm not judging you if you decide to go that route. That's just how the approach I'm taking. But the one negative, and I know people have heard me say this a lot, sorry to repeat it again, but I was really shocked that the team passed on Cam Whitmore. I thought he would have been fantastic with the number 19 pick. And for them to just not even give a second thought to it. Podziemski apparently was number 11 on Dunleavy Jr.'s draft board. So he was locked in for the team. What are your thoughts on Podziemski, man? I mean, do you like the pickup? I know you mentioned that there's some questions there, but your thoughts on Brandon Podziemski.
Well, just getting back to Whitmore real quick, and then we can kind of get into Podziemski. Yeah. I actually think, it's pretty instructive of their thinking, the Warriors thinking with Podziemski, that they didn't even consider drafting Cam Whitmore, you would think, because they were looking for a win-now player, someone who could come into Steve Kerr's system specifically and help the team next year. I think it's a little foolish to think Brandon Podziemski is going to do that as a rookie. And we saw Mike Dunleavy Jr. say that right after the draft, that, he doesn't expect any rookie to come in and contribute to winning basketball. And then as far as, I totally agree with you as far as Summer League goes, you never want to draw too many conclusions from Summer League, save if you have any questions about a player and then those questions persist throughout Summer League play. So Podziemski, people have talked about him as having like adequate size for a shooting guard. He's obviously not a 3. He's a 2. He's probably not a 1 because he doesn't have the juice to really crease the paint, get a shoulder pass a defender, draw defenders, that type of thing. I'm just a little worried about his size at the 2. Defensively, he's not super quick laterally. We kind of saw that throughout Summer League. I thought he was a good team defender. I didn't think he was like super exploited, when getting targeted in pick and roll in Summer League, but you don't really see that anyway. But say he got on the floor for the Warriors as a rookie, I do think he would be the type of guy who would be targeted by, LeBron James, John Morant, Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the type of just below average, kind of physically limited defender who is exploited in the playoffs. And we saw that with Jordan Poole, obviously. We saw that with Poole 2 years ago, even when he was a flamethrower offensively. We even saw it with Steph, some against the Lakers specifically. So I just have a few questions about Podziemski defensively, and then offensively, he's a brilliant passer. Like I assume you saw that. That's in Vegas and in Sacramento as well. He was probably the best passer in Vegas. Maybe he wouldn't have been if Scoot Henderson didn't get injured, 20 minutes into his first game with the Blazers. But incredibly impressive passer, great feel. He's going to make a lot of impact for the Warriors as a second side playmaker, attacking closeouts and dribble handoff games, stuff like that. My biggest concern with him right now is he was drafted as a dead-eye shooter, and it just really looked to me like he struggled adjusting to the three-point line and the speed of NBA defenders. Like you would see sometimes where he would try to speed up his release when a defender was closing out at him, or he'd step behind a dribble handoff, or he'd been hesitant to shoot before, but he had said that he was going to come out aggressive, and just led to some ugly misses. He was 8 of 32 from 3 over 7 games. It's obviously a small sample size, and again, I never want to draw too much from Summer League, but just for a guy drafted as a dead-eye shooter who shot like 43% or something on high volume in Santa Clara last year, it just doesn't look right now like he's going to be that type of shooter. I don't want to say he's not going to be his entire career, but if he's going to get any burn for the Warriors next season, he needs to be that dead-eye shooter. And to me, right now, it just
I'm 100% with you, man. In all honesty, I feel like most questions would not even be raised if he was shooting in Summer League the way he shot in college, but his shooting was just awful. I mean, so I'm not. I 100% agree with you.
Ugly misses, and it just didn't look like a repeatable stroke necessarily. The arc was different at times. He's got great touch. He's got an awesome floater game. I know 2 shots didn't really go in there. I'm a little less worried about that because I think that'll translate. But yeah, with time, and there's, like we said, there's 2 months until the regular season. These guys are so talented, and Podziemski's like a really, really notoriously hard worker. We saw his meteoric rise after transferring to Santa Clara from Illinois. So, he could very well be that dead-eye shooter that they drafted come September 30th or 28th or whatever when the Warriors open camp. But right now at Summer League, he wasn't that guy.
No, I'm totally, and the work ethic does not seem to be in question, and his commitment to the Warriors doesn't seem to be in question either. He seems to be proud of being a member of the Warriors, and at a minimum, maybe that checks off a box from what they were missing last year, because there was actually oddly criticism of the Warriors bench not being supportive enough, not being animated enough, and maybe he solves that. That those kind of things are, I don't know how important they are, but regardless, at least.
That stuff matters to the championship alchemy, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like everything needs to go right for you to win a title in the NBA, right?
True.
And that's actually kind of a good segue into Steph's comments a little bit, because
absolutely,
like you said, Brandon Podziemski is a guy who, if whether he's going to play 12 minutes off the bench or he knows he's going to be a DNP CD and knows he's not going to play unless there were some multiple injuries to Chris Paul, Stephen Curry, whoever, that he's going to bring the same positive attitude every night, and that's what the Warriors need.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. Before we touch on the Steph comments, as someone who is a beat reporter, you're a journalist, you're a reporter covering the Golden State Warriors. What are your thoughts? And I thought of this right only because you brought up Mike Dunleavy Jr.'s comments a moment ago. What were your thoughts about the fact that Dunleavy Jr. Publicly committed to Jordan Poole, said he's going to be here for the next 4 years? 3 days later, he's gone. Does that faze you? Does that bother you? Do you have any opinions on that?
Sounds like a studied veteran general manager to me.
There you go.
Jordan Poole's value.
There you go.
Jordan Poole's value is already at an all-time low. Some of that had nothing to do with him. He didn't ask to get punched in the face. I frankly don't really care what he said to Draymond. The way that Draymond went up to him and sucker punched him was absolutely unacceptable. And it's not really Jordan Poole's fault for the lingering fallout throughout the season that clearly affected him. And then there's the fact that players of Jordan Poole's nature and his stature, just kind of a combo guard, not a 1, not a 2. He's going to be exploited defensively. They need the ball to be effective. We've seen with Tyler Hero, we've seen with Anthony Simons in these trade discussions for Damian Lillard. Those guys just aren't valued, even at the way they were 18 months ago, I would say, or when Poole signed his extension, coming off a title. So that had something to do with it too. But as far as just getting back to Dunleavy, no, he said that, and like in our chat at work, everyone's going off, oh my God, they're not trading. I was like, no, guys, that is not what that means at all. That is just lip service. The fans can take what they want from it, but no, like I said, that if Bob Myers had said that, I would have thought the same thing. If who's a really respected GM, Masai Ujiri or Daryl Morey, if they'd said the same thing, I would have thought that doesn't mean anything.
GM speak, yeah,
exactly. JP's probably getting moved regardless.
When we come back, we're going to talk about Stephen Curry's comments that he made to The Athletic. And there were interesting comments for sure. We're going to get Jack Winter's feedback on that as well. After we give some love first to Ibotta, which is all about saving money when you shop. Jack, have you ever tried Ibotta?
I've not, no.
Yeah, in all honesty, neither have I. But a huge reason is because I don't shop that much.
Yeah, me neither.
But I do need to try it out because you do save money. And regardless of how the economy is doing, I don't see if there's ever a bad moment to save money. And that's what Ibotta is all about, especially if you're in the summer when you're shopping for burgers and hot dogs, when you're shopping for T-shirts and shorts, whatever it is you're buying, you can save money if you use Ibotta. It can give you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, whether it's produce, personal care, pantry goods. So you can, at least in a time where, we're dealing with inflation, that's a fancy word for corporate greed. Look, Ibotta can be there for you in terms of helping you out, even just a little bit. The average Ibotta user earns $120 per year, which can cover the cost of a shopping trip simply by using the app. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED, LOCKED. When you register, just go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibotta app and use the code LOCKED, LOCKED. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use the code LOCKED, LOCKED.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Everydayers Kylan Mills is going to join me again tomorrow to wrap up the week. Follow us on Twitter. We do still have an account there. My personal account's on Threads, but the show account is on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. That's where we post all of our show times and upcoming guests. So make sure you follow us there. Make sure you follow Jack Winter, a Golden State Warriors beat reporter for Clutch Points, on Twitter at Armstrong Winter. So Stephen Curry, and by the way, I'm going to get to any chat questions that we don't touch on. We might address it at the end of the show. Rebel to Sounds, I see your comment regarding Jordan Poole working out with Steph and Clay. We'll touch on that at the end of the show. And AC, agree to disagree on inflation never being caused by corporate greed. That is asinine, man. Just take a look at how much profit the oil companies, corporate farming industries, they're reaping in the profits. It is not inflation. It is pure corporate greed. Sorry to burst your bubble there, but if you disagree with me, just do the most basic form of research and find those answers. This is not a political show, though. This is all about the Warriors. Stephen Curry was talking with Marcus Thompson of The Athletic. And look, Marcus Thompson, congrats to him for having this incredible connection. Stephen Curry is his source. I think he even wrote a book on Steph. So they did an interview, and I'm going to read verbatim what Stephen Curry said in the middle of this interview, which really stood out. And it had to do with the expectations he has in regards to his teammates. And the quote is this, quote, "The biggest thing is, look at teams that have won. You realize," actually, let me share my screen real quick so everyone else can kind of see what this is and join along here in the process. So Steph, one more time. Sorry so much for this part. Okay, here we go. The quote, "The biggest thing is, look at teams that have won. You realize that there is a certain way about how you show up on a nightly basis. Everybody is important. Everybody is valuable. It's not going to look pretty for the majority of the year for some guys. Some are going to be in and out of the rotation. Guys are going to be asked to do things that may not all the way vibe with how they see themselves. You've got your core that's got to figure out how to stay at a certain level. All those things are about winning. We had a lot of narratives around the team that have been a little bit distracting to that, but that's all it is. It's not about anything other than winning," unquote. Jack, I interpret this in a lot of ways. I thought this was fascinating, but the floor is yours. Interpret this how you may. What are your thoughts on Steph's words?
I think he's just really referencing how the Warriors need to get back to strength in numbers, basically. And I don't necessarily mean that they're going to be, playing a 12-man rotation or anything like that, but strength in numbers means everyone rowing the same way in the boat, right? I didn't quite get that phrase right, but everyone going for the same common goal. And the Warriors didn't have that last year, right? Whether it's related to the disease of more of winning a title that like Pat Riley coined in the 80s, where guys get a little too big for their britches after a team wins a title, or it's a young guy like Jonathan Kuminga, like James Wiseman, who had, they hadn't been promised that they were going to get more playing time and become a more significant part of the rotation, but they'd been earmarked for those roles for so long, right? And then when those things weren't going well, there was all types of turmoil in the locker room. It was reported throughout the season. It's why Steph Curry had to have that epic speech before Game 7 when he had 50 points in a performance we'll never forget. He was talking almost directly to Jordan Poole and Jonathan Kuminga there, the reporting states. Not mine, to be clear. I forget who it was. But yeah, the Warriors have a lot of questions to answer this summer, even after kind of I don't want to say cleaning house, but they kind of did try and fix the chemistry issues, right? They tried to fix the connectivity issues. That's a word that both Steve Kerr and Mike Dunleavy Jr. like to use a lot. Connectivity.
Yes, they do.
And so I really think that's what this is about. And yes, I think it definitely applies to Chris Paul. You didn't say that, Cyrus, but I think that's probably what everyone is kind of reading into here. Whether or not Chris Paul will start, how often he'll share the floor with Curry, who's going to have the ball most of the time when Steph, CP, and Draymond Green are on the floor, because we all know they like to have the ball, even though Steph's amazing off ball. So yeah, it's really just about the Warriors committing to one common goal. And I really think it applies to almost everyone on the roster. Everyone's going to have to adjust a little bit, not just because of last season's failures, but because the changes Dunleavy has made going into next season.
Yeah, totally. And the weird thing is, and sorry if I'm repeating what you said, I didn't hear you say this. We talked about this before we started the show. Is that what Steph said? We've been hearing Steve Kerr say this for months about how he needs players to buy in, put the ego aside, put the me first attitude aside, and who knows if Steph's the originator of this? Who knows if both of them just share this philosophy? But it does suddenly make Kerr's comments make way more sense. But let me ask you, who do you think Steph is referring to? Is it everybody? Do you think there's someone specific that that you're thinking of, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought of CP. I thought of Jonathan Kuminga. I thought of Moses Moody, though. We've never heard anything about Moses Moody's attitude being a problem, even when he was going in and out of the rotation. Kerr spoke shortly after the season and said Moody had a breakthrough during practice that led to him getting those playoff minutes against the Kings and against the Lakers. So I'm not sure it necessarily has to do with him specifically. But yeah, I do think he was mostly talking about the team, at large. And then there are some guys who just have to answer more questions about their games this season. And it is interesting that one of them is a 38-year-old future Hall of Fame point guard. Playoffs, at 39, he's never come off the bench before, and he's notoriously stubborn, and he likes to play his way, and he wants things his way. That's fascinating, a fascinating wrinkle. I've loved Chris Paul, since he was Blur Chris Paul, right? In the mid 2000s, when he was one of the fastest players in the league, when he was dunking on Dwight Howard, when he, took the Lakers to 6 games with that Hornets team in 2010, 2011. So yeah, that's obviously going to be really interesting. And it's probably the highlight of the Warriors offseason. And then I think there's no way you read this quote as a Warriors fan and you don't think that Steph is referencing Jonathan Kuminga. We know the type of player Jonathan Kuminga wants to be. We know he's not going to be that on-ball force, that future all-star. He's not going to necessarily get the chance to show that this season with the Warriors because they're loaded on the wing. They have plenty of guys to play on ball. But what Jonathan Kuminga needs to absolutely do is he needs to, first and foremost, rebound the basketball. That's going to be the thing that gets him on the floor. Kerr has talked about it ad nauseum. Yeah. He did last season and then during the playoffs as well. And Kuminga even said that that's the one main thing he's focusing on. And then two other things I'd like to see Jonathan Kuminga improve on is just as a short role playmaker. I'd love to see him develop a nice 2-man game with Chris Paul where he can catch lobs from Chris Paul. He can be Chris Paul's dive man that opens up, the mid-range game that's made Chris Paul so famous. And then just running in transition. We need Jonathan Kuminga to be an absolute force in transition, to not only score for himself, but to suck defenders in and create trail opportunities for, the best shooters in the world. So, like I said, I think it has everything to do with the entire team at large, Steph's quote. But if I was going to pin it on, just pinpoint 2 players, it would definitely be CP and JK.
Well, and speaking of CP3, that segs into the soundbite I want to play. from former Golden State Warriors center Boogie Cousins, a player that people have been asking for a while. And, all I can tell people who want Boogie Cousins on the Warriors is, to the best of my knowledge, and this is not me reporting a fact, this is speculative, but I've heard this a lot over the years. And what I've heard is that Steve Kerr just doesn't want him back, that he doesn't see Boogie as a fit. Jack, I don't know if you've heard anything different or can add anything to that. But while
what I can say is that Boogie played really well for the Nuggets, not last season, but the season before that, surprisingly well. And everyone thought he would be brought back because of that. And then the Nuggets, despite having a huge hole at backup center, hemorrhaging points every time Nikola Jokic steps off the field. Obviously, that has something to do with him being a historic great. But it also has something to do with they just had no viable depth at center. The Nuggets did not bring Boogie Cousins back. They traded for Thomas Bryant midway through the season to address that need, and then that didn't happen either. Boogie Cousins was sitting there for anyone to sign, and he went unsigned. I love Boogie Cousins as a player in his prime, 2013 to 2016 with the Kings and that brief time with the Pelicans. But he's not that guy anymore, and I'm not sure is the one we should be looking into for thoughts on how Chris Paul is going to fit with the Warriors. However, let's get into it though. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Well, I mean, before we get into that, but would you agree or disagree that Boogie played well for the Nuggets the last time we saw him in the NBA, or did you not think he played well that year?
No. I thought he played really well, but it just speaks to, I think there have been murmurs throughout his career of him being kind of a problem in the locker room. I don't mean not the guys hate him or anything, but just that, maybe he's about himself or he wants things one way. And, some of that stuff you can get away with when you're DeMarcus Cousins in 2014 and you're, the third best big man in the league and fighting for all NBA honors. But when you're 34 and you've had multiple lower body injuries and the game is kind of tilting away from your style anyway, even though he's added a jumper, obviously shooting threes with the Warriors and with the Nuggets, and he's a great passer. So it could theoretically work. But it's the mindset for Boogie, I think, that's always been the problem. And I think that's kind of what we're going to get into here.
No, totally. Look, clearly he's rubbed a lot of people the wrong way because right now he's playing in Puerto Rico, or at least he did. And from what I'm hearing, he played well, but yeah, he's basically played himself out of the league, and his personality has played a huge part in that. Such a shame that Achilles a tendon injury really cost him so many years, cost him a massively huge paycheck as well. But so Boogie was on Sirius XM, and I don't know how the topic came up to Chris Paul, but it came up. And Boogie had some interesting things to say about the Warriors trading for Chris Paul.
I'm going to be honest. I didn't understand the Chris Paul trade.
Okay.
And then I looked at it as if maybe this is just a contract thing. Maybe they want to, free up the books for the next season. But as far as it being about basketball and X's and O's on the court, I don't really see that elevating the Golden State Warriors, to be honest.
Why is that, Marcus?
For everything you just spoke on, he is up in that age. You got rid of a young, youthful guy for, an aging veteran. And I'm not taking away anything Chris Paul has done throughout his career. I'm just speaking on this stage of his career. I don't see him elevating the Golden State Warriors. And, hey, I could be wrong. He could go find the fountain of youth this summer and come out and, win MVP. I don't know. 6 man in a year. Who knows? But based on what I've seen in this stage of his career and the addition to the team, I don't see that really elevating the Golden State Warriors.
Well, those are Boogie Cousins' thoughts. He doesn't think Chris Paul is going to make a big enough difference. Jack, what's your response to what Boogie said?
I actually hadn't heard the audio until we just listened to it. I'd seen the quote. I don't even necessarily totally disagree with what he's saying.
Same.
Yeah, like if he's talking about how, the Warriors run almost less pick and roll than any team in the league, and Chris Paul, no one maybe in NBA history has run more pick and roll than Chris Paul, and he continues to do it at 38. He did it with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker on the team last year. There were times where KD was just standing in the corner, Booker on the left wing, and, Chris Paul running high pick and roll, settling for mid-range jumpers and making a lot of them, making them at a really, really high rate. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I would imagine it's high 40s. The problem with that is it's still a 2-point jumper, and that's the least efficient shot in basketball. So that's a question I have offensively with Chris Paul, as well as he's always played at a really deliberate pace when the ball is in his hands since he got older. Then obviously the Warriors love to push the tempo. I'm optimistic Chris Paul can speed it up a bit, push the ball up himself, and even more so pitch ahead to guys sprinting in transition. I don't think that'll necessarily be a problem. I suppose if I'm saying I have to agree with Boogie though, and maybe I do, I don't know. My biggest question is on defense, because I don't think Chris Paul, against the best teams in the league, the teams the Warriors will need to beat to win the title, He just doesn't answer the defensive questions that they had throughout last season's playoffs. When Steve Kerr needed to go small to get some more juice on the floor offensively, then it meant Jordan Poole was coming in, and he was an absolute traffic cone. Chris Paul's going to be better than that, but he's not the all defense guy he was several years ago. He doesn't get targeted nearly as much as you'd think, and that's partially just a reputation thing. I think that's coming this season. I think teams will, if he's on the floor with Steph, especially, I think LeBron James will pick and choose, picking on Steph and Chris Paul and pick and roll. And even if they're not doing that, there's still diminishing returns when you're playing two small guards against really, really, really high level competition. So again, if I have to agree with Boogie Cousins, it's that, and again, maybe I do, it's that it will be interesting to see how Chris Paul's pick and roll based game fits in with the Warriors, motion based, off ball, cutting heavy system. And then as well as just the questions I have defensively about putting another small guard next to Steph in crunch time.
No, absolutely. And AC, I don't know. I feel like you've been sniffing glue today. He did have a very clear point, which is that some people are hyping up Chris Paul as being like the savior for the Warriors, that he's single-handedly going to be a difference between them being a conference semifinal team and a world champion. And Boogie's saying no. I mean, this is a 38-year-old player who is not the same person he was 5-10 years ago. And, and I do love the fact that when someone expresses an opinion like that, for some reason, this is just me, but when you add the caveat of I could be wrong, this is just my opinion, I respect that, because at least you're showing self-awareness, right? That you are not a grandiose opinion spewer. So I do like that he said that, but I will say this, and let me know if you agree with this or not, Jack. I think Chris Paul, if he does come off the bench, if he does help out Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody and works with those two, and leads the second unit, embraces that role, maybe even brings a fresh perspective to Steve Kerr. I mean, we saw comments from Stephen Curry that he felt the offense was stagnant, that the motion offense started to become predictable. They weren't mixing it up, and Chris Paul will mix it up. So I see the value there. Do you see that as well? Or I don't know. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on what I just said?
I certainly think, I don't think anyone's saying that Chris Paul isn't going to bring something positive to the Warriors in 2023-24. Based on the way Jordan Poole ended last season, I think he's going to be an upgrade. Just being, his intelligence, number one on both ends.
Right.
He's like another quarterback out there defensively. He'll be talking most on the team defensively, behind Draymond Green, Kevon Looney, of course. But he can be an impact player on that end, even if he's not an on-ball stopper, even if the Warriors are going to try and hide him. But I just still have questions about his impact defensively at the highest levels. Now he holds up against a Nikola Jokic team.
Yeah, exactly.
For instance. But then offensively, he's not an awesome off-ball player. His release is slow. His shot release is slow. He's never been super comfortable taking catch and shoot jumpers, and the numbers have borne that out for years. Even after the Suns got KD last season, I think CP was in the high 40s on catch and shoot 3-pointer percentage, but the volume was just kind of startlingly low until you remember that he's just never really been comfortable catching and shooting like that. You wish he would be, and I would imagine that he spent the entire summer doing that. Because there are going to be times where Steph has the ball, obviously, even though he's the best off-ball player in the league. And there are going to be even more times when Draymond Green is orchestrating the offense. And Chris Paul is going to need to find a way to make himself useful. And maybe we're kind of overlooking this. And I guess I said it at the top here, but Chris Paul is a basketball genius. Yeah. Right. And the Warriors need that intelligence, not just for their system, but just because they were lacking it last year, really beyond Draymond and Steph and Loon. I would say they didn't have really, maybe Dante DiVincenzo to a certain extent, but they just didn't have really, really smart feel-based basketball players out there, guys who, can see things a step or two ahead of the game on both ends. And now they do. And just adding a presence like that, I think will be beneficial.
No, I'm totally with you. And you brought up a great point, though, which is that despite the move, despite adding even Dario Saric, I don't know if this team is still at a point where they have an answer for the Nikola Jokic's of the world. Where even if they have an answer for the Los Angeles Lakers, who last I checked did not get smaller, and they just pounded the Warriors in that series. In your opinion, what should the Warriors do with that 14th roster spot that's open, and can they compete against these bigger teams? What are your thoughts on that?
I think they can. I think the Nuggets enter next season as a favorite. I think losing Bruce Brown definitely hurts, maybe more than people are thinking, just because of the defense. He gave them the defensive versatility he gave them, and then kind of the role flexibility he gave them offensively as well. They could bench Michael Porter if he was a defensive liability or didn't have it going offensively. He could fill in for Jamal Murray at point, just a super versatile, impactful guy. They lost Jeff Green too.
Right.
But yeah, as far as the Warriors and just their size concerns, I'm just not sure there was going to be a signing or any type of personnel move or a trade that would have addressed them in any meaningful way that affects their championship equity. I guess, the Warriors are a small team. They've been a small team really throughout the dynasty, actually, except when they were loaded with 6'7" to 6'8" wings and they had 4 or 5 of them and are able to switch across the floor. Every team in the league wants to be that, but there are only so many Andrew Wigginses out there, and prime Alphas out there, right?
But their title teams always had size. I mean, like you look at the most recent one, Bielitsa, Otto Porter Jr. Obviously
those aren't big though. Like
they're big enough though. They're bigger than 6'3", right? I mean, these are still 6'8", 6'9" guys. I mean, I don't think you need 7 feet, but you do. I think 6'7", 6'8", I feel like is your Mendoza line. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
no, I actually totally agree with you. And that's something I kind of overlooked about the Nuggets, is that they were just huge.
Yeah.
Irrespective of Jokic, he's obviously massive, but they went 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", 6'10", 6'9", and then Jokic, and then bringing in Jeff Green off the bench and playing all these crazy no center lineups that were really impactful defensively. Like that's because they had a bunch of those 6'6" to 6'8" guys, like you just said.
Right.
Ideally, of course, the Warriors, like I said, would have as many of those guys as possible. And what is a little concerning is that the Warriors, and that's kind of why I didn't love the Podziemski pick, right? It's because they added another small guard. You could say he's filling Dante DiVincenzo's spot, and you can say that Gary Payton plays bigger than 6'2", 6'3", or 6'4", whatever he is. And of course he does. That's true. But it is a problem that the Warriors have so many guys to stand around 6'2", 6'3". And then maybe we can segue into this if you'd like. Lester Quinones is another one of those guys. I love Lester. I love what he did at Summer League. If I had my druthers, I think the Warriors would just give him that 14th spot. I don't think they're going to find anyone better on the open market at this point. And it would just be nice to have him, in the system on a day-to-day basis in San Francisco with the team rather than on one of those 3 2-ways for me.
No, totally. My fingers are crossed for like a JaVale McGee type if he's bought out, but you're right. There aren't like a lot of players out there, and it does worry me. Like the size thing does still worry me a little bit, because if the Warriors are going to do this, if they're going to come back and be world champions again, like everything has to line up perfectly. Like if anything derails, any injuries, any lack of cohesion from Chris Paul, for example, like this thing's over. I don't think they have a shot, but it'll be interesting. We're going to be entertained for sure. A couple of people in the chat, and I started these, 2 people specifically. Rebel the Sounds asked this question: What are our thoughts on Steph and Curry working out with? And these are based off these black and white photos that were published on social media. Luis Roberson, also is asking the picture. These are black and white photos. It's Steph, it's Clay. I believe it's Scoot Henderson is in the photo, and then Jordan Poole. I don't know when these photos were taken. Do you have more information on that?
No, unfortunately I have no inside info on that. I mean, I know Steph is obviously working out with Scoot pre-draft, and they have a relationship. And Poole, I think, was quoted during Summer League. He said, I can always text Steph or Clay, like that doesn't change. He still has a strong relationship with those guys. Of course, we all know
right.
Is leaving out, right? But no, I'm not surprised if those guys were just getting a workout in and they were all together. That makes perfect sense that they do it. I don't think we need to read too much into it either way. Like we know that Steph and Clay ride for Draymond. That doesn't mean that they still can't be friends with Jordan Poole. Exactly. Just like any other friendship or profession, when they're not future Hall of Fame NBA players,
Yeah, I don't know if there's anyone on the planet who, like, I know hate's a strong word, even dislikes Stephen Curry. Like, I don't know if he has any enemies in the NBA. Can you think of anyone that legitimately just doesn't like him? I can't think of one person. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of it, and I really can't. I think maybe at a time you might have said Russell Westbrook, but like not anymore. Now that they're both older. No, I don't.
Yeah,
same thing with Clay. like those guys are beloved and so well respected across the league. It makes perfect sense that they'd get in a summer workout with a former teammate, and Scoop might be around and they'd include him in it. I think that's all that is, and it's fun. It's fun to speculate. It makes for great off-season fodder. You can think about what they may be working on in the gym, all that. But yeah, I don't think there's too much there.
Yeah, same. It could have been months ago. Who knows when the photos were taken? But yeah, I think if you're going to interpret those photos as anything, it's that Jordan Poole probably has just one person on the Warriors that he doesn't like, and that's Draymond Green. And Poole is not the first ex teammate that Draymond Green has pissed off and has fractured, burned a bridge. Harrison Barnes similarly does not like Draymond Green, did not invite him to his wedding. So that's Draymond for you.
And then when HB missed that game winning three, that I think would have been game 2 of the first round of the playoffs. What was Draymond yelling at? Oh, we've seen that before. Because talking about how HB just kept bricking jumpers throughout that 2016 playoff run. So yeah, Poole's not the first ex-Warrior, or
right
when crossways with Dre.
Absolutely. I am going to be very curious to see that Wizards Warriors game, especially when Jordan Poole's father is going to be there, because if those, I am fascinated. I'm sure a lot of other people are as well. The photographers are going to have their lenses and their cameras ready to shoot. So that will be fun for sure. Jack, anything you want to promote, mention? Do you feel like there's anything we didn't discuss or cover on today's show as you wrap it up?
I don't think so. I mean, what you like, I was kind of dismissing what you said about the size issue to a certain extent, but then I really did focus on how the Warriors just have so many guards, man. They just have so many guards, and that is a problem. Like when you want to close with CP, you're going 6 foot, 6'3", Clay 6'6", and slower than he's ever been. He's more of a forward defender now. Wig and Dre, that's just a really, really, really small team. I just don't know how those teams clean the glass or defend the rim, keep the ball out of the paint. Like it's gonna be really tough. I mean, it's gonna be fascinating because there are gonna be those games where Kerr definitely closes with that 5. But against certain opponents, it is just going to be really, really tough.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely with you. I guess I'll finish with this though, and I'll ask you this because I can only speculate. I haven't really heard a concrete answer. Why do you think Kerr has this affinity for small ball? Like, what do you think the specific reason is, if any?
Draymond Green. You have the best small ball player of all time.
There you go.
He's the best small ball big man of all time. Like the NBA went the direction it did because David Lee got hurt in preseason 2014, and that allowed Draymond Green to step in and start the lineup, and then the Warriors discovered the dynasty, right? It's because Draymond Green exists, I think. Like if the Warriors had a future Hall of Fame 7-footer who kind of played like Draymond, maybe we wouldn't be calling it small ball, and they'd be playing a similar way, perhaps. But yeah, I just think it's a personnel thing. The Warriors' identity is Steph Curry more than anyone else. But secondly, the Warriors' identity is Draymond Green on both ends of the floor, and that's how they've won 4 championships.
I'm totally with you, man. In fact, I just helped narrate a documentary that's coming out soon on Steph, and I brought up that exact point, how that David Lee injury just was really the catalyst for Draymond Green emerging, and Draymond Green's emergence is what led to this dynasty. It's what led to this whole revolution. You're absolutely right. I'm with you.
And then the other thing, just real quick side, it also speaks to Draymond's limitations, because you can't put a 7-footer next to Draymond unless that 7-footer is going to be stroking threes, right? Because Draymond's a non-shooter, so that just cramps all the space that Steph Curry would give you. So I really think it does come down to Draymond more than anything else. And then just the fact that in an ideal world, in this pace and space NBA, is that the Warriors have proven, and teams before them have proven, that again at the highest levels, those switchable teams with one star ball handler, just one weak defender who isn't an abject liability, those switchable teams have been the ones to get it done. And Kerr still sees that in these Warriors, and I think he's right to do it. As long as Draymond Green and Steph Curry are anywhere near their primes, I think that's the way the Warriors need to play.
Exactly. Huge if, especially with Clay. I'm very curious to see if Clay can turn his shooting around, because that was disappointing. Should be interesting regardless. I'm very excited for the regular season. Absolutely. I know we got some time before it starts. Stay safe up in Montana. Try and stay cool. You'll be back soon, and we'll get you back on the show soon for sure, Jack. Follow Jack Winter, a Golden State Warriors beat reporter covering the team for Clutch Points, on Twitter at Armstrong Winter. Always a pleasure, Jack. Thank you so much, man. It really was fun.
Appreciate
All right, man. And thank you, everyone. We'll be back at this tomorrow with Kylan Mills. Until then, take care. Bye-bye. Later. Peace out. That was fun, man. Thank you, brother.